Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty, where I create with paper and photos in artful ways. Today's makes are a little less about the final product and a little more about the tools and processes that we use when we are making. We're going to talk a little bit about alcohol markers, seeing circle punches as different shapes, and also using some internet resources. If you are new here, my makes are a part of my design teamwork over at the Counterfeit Kit Challenge. That was the graphic for what this project is called. Now I've popped up the inspiration. We always start with inspiration every month with kit builds and making, and this one is from the Hip Kit Club September 24 kit. I have a big list of ideas, but I know I can't make them all, so let's make what we can. We are going to start with stamping and coloring, and since stamping and coloring isn't complicated, I want to focus on talking a little bit about alcohol markers. Now, I have Copics here, which are on the more expensive end, but there are cheaper options, which Tri-Blends are one of those. You get 3 different colors in one marker, and that's nice if you're going to be doing complicated blending. I am not going to be doing that today. So why use alcohol markers if I'm not going to be doing the artful, complicated blending? This is what sold me on alcohol markers years ago. When you are doing a solid shade of color, you do not get any streaks with alcohol markers. And I'm going to show you here the comparison side by side with the regular water-based marker on the right versus the alcohol marker on the left. So hopefully you can see here, the alcohol there on the left is smoother than the one here on the right, where when the markers overlap, you get much darker streaks. And the larger area you're coloring, the more that becomes noticeable. So alcohol markers are a great choice even for simple coloring. So you might want to go ahead and invest in a few alcohol markers in some basic colors and see if you like them. Now you do have to worry about the ink that you're using when you're stamping for coloring with alcohol markers. These two, Gina K Designs Amalgam ink and Memento ink, are both good for stamping and alcohol coloring. And I'm going to use my Memento ink pad today because, quite frankly, I ruined my Gina K ink pad. So it's good to have 2 different kinds that you're using so that you have a backup. All right, and like I said, this isn't complicated. I am just going to stamp down my images. I will heat set them because these inks often take just a little bit longer to dry, and if they're not completely dry, you will get smudging of that blank ink. So once that is done, I just set to work coloring like grade school coloring book outline coloring. No big deal. All right, as I skip over most of the coloring, I'll show you the final result here. You see, it's not complicated, but I wanted to talk about the next thing about alcohol markers that are a bonus over regular water-based markers. Notice that little book stack there? I made a little boo-boo where I colored outside the line. So with alcohol markers, depending on the color and the paper that you're using, you may be able to erase mistakes. And you do that with this marker called the blending pen, or the number 0 in the Copic system. And that is just the alcohol base to the marker without any pigment in it. And you can use this to push that alcohol fluid into your mistake. And the action of the alcohol moving through the paper will help pull the pigment away from that area and up into the zone where it belongs. You want to wait for that to dry completely. I'm helping it along here because that action will continue until that ink is completely dry. And you can repeat this process several times in order to keep pushing that ink over and into the zone where it belongs. So let me go ahead and show you a close-up of the before and after so that you can see the process. This was just with 1 round of correction. So I will keep working that just a little bit more to get the final correction done. All right, the point of doing all of the stamping and coloring is to make our own embellishments. And if you don't have matching dies to go with your stamps, which I don't for a lot of things, circle punches are just brilliant for anything. And I do keep a variety of sizes because I do circle punching a lot. And that will lead us into the next segment where we are going to look at our circles in a very different way and see what other shapes we can get out of it. And this was inspired because there was a lot of apple motifs in the inspiration kit, and I happen to have this lovely apple die set that matches the inspiration very well. And I can just go ahead and die cut myself some apples. But the point of this video is not for you to watch me use my lovely stuff. It is for you to learn how to make your stuff more flexible and possibly save you money. So there are the apples that I die cut. But now we're going to make some apples just using circles. So I die cut a green circle and a white circle, both from a 1-inch circle punch. And you will need a little bit of scissor work here, and it might not be perfect, but the more you practice, the better it will get. This all leads into just being more creative down the road. So I folded my circle in half, and to give it more of an apple shape, I am going to round off that corner. The apple does dip in down a little bit, and so I'm starting with a little dip and then a round. When I cut off the bottom dip of the apple, I didn't do that rounding motion, and I will go back and fix that a little bit later because it does sit there bugging me. The top was bugging me the most because it wasn't quite round enough, so I just went in and rounded it off a little bit more just to get more of an apple shape. We are starting with circle punch, so it is not going to be perfect, but as you can see, we're starting to get towards an apple shape. All right, the next step of this is to take the inner part of the apple, the flesh of the apple, using white cardstock, and we have to trim it down slightly smaller than the outer part of the apple. So I started off doing this with the green part in front, and I really should have reversed that and just done the white part in front because I wasn't getting the sizing quite right. But after realizing what would make life easier, I went ahead and folded it over, and I started working at it from the front and redoing it basically because it wasn't the right size to begin with anyway. So a little bit more trimming on that one, and it is ready to go. All right, now the inner part of my apple is slightly smaller than the outer part, so we've got the look of an apple that has been sliced in half, and you can see the inside. Part of what you see on the inside of the apple, though, is those apple seeds, and this is just easy to draw on with a pin. Any pin will do here, and even a marker will work here. I draw a teardrop shape, and I am doing 3 of them just because that matches my pre-made apple up there, just so you can see how we can do things by hand, and it doesn't have to be terribly complicated. We do have more parts of our apple to create, so I brought out the tan piece that I'd used to die cut. We are going to make a stem out of this. First, I die cut the circle, and then I put it back in my punch part way to create a notched curved edge. And once I put it back in there just ever so slightly and punch it again, that is going to give me a curved sliver, and you could totally cut this by hand. But what's nice about the circle punch is that you do get much smoother edges, and so it looks just a little bit more finished. And even though I have to be okay with a lot of the imperfections of the hand portions that we do with this project, I do appreciate when things do look slightly more finished. All right, now we're going to use the same process of punching a circle. You don't really need a full circle for this, so using scraps is great. And we're going to create a leaf shape. Now, I've probably shown this in videos before, but I can't remember specifically when. So you just put it back in there and then punch that piece again. And you've got 2 curves on each side, and that creates the most basic of leaf shapes. And you could try different sizes, larger, smaller, whatever you need. And I have done this apple in a larger size circle punch just so it's easier for you to see on video, but really you can do it with any size circle. If you have a nested die set of circles, you could even create apples in a bunch of different sizes. All right, here is the part where I was looking at my homemade creation versus the side-by-side die cut creation. And I was realizing that the points on that bottom were making me less happy. So if I just give them a quick round off, and luckily I hadn't glued it entirely down yet, I can make it smoother and make it look more to how I would like it to. And this is the process of creating by hand, is that you try some things and you adjust when they aren't working as well. So there you go. That is how you can create apples out of simple circle punches. And there is the side-by-side look, and I wanted to show you just one more quick item that I made out of circles. Again, using the inspiration kit and these mod florals, or as I've learned they're called, Scandinavian floral motifs. These are very upright looking, very symmetrical flowers, and it's really easy to accomplish this with a pair of scissors, some scraps, and a circle punch. So first I'm going to make myself a stem that is very upright. And I should have done this with a little bit smaller of a circle punch, but I was using what I had on my desk, and that's it. That is what it is. We are going to create leaves for our florals just like we did for the apple by first creating the circle. And then I do find using a pair of reverse tweezers when I'm trying to get these smaller pieces back into my punches really helpful, because I don't have to try and hold on very closely to those circles as it's going into the punch. All right, a punch on one side and a punch on the other side of this circle, and then I've got two leaves. Now, if you saw me take that scrap away, that scrap totally makes me think of an apple core. I didn't go back and work with it, but once you start seeing your shapes as other shapes, your mind opens up and your crafting opens up, and you can come up with a lot more ideas. All right, for this mod floral, I am just going to cut circles and arrange them in a ring as my flower petals. And getting these nicely spaced can be a little bit tricky, so I'm just going to do the best I can. And all of these will get glued on to the center of my flower, which I will punch from the exact same size circle punch out of a floral center contrasting color. Here's where I thought I could have done that center with a little handheld punch. And even as I brought the punch up to the paper, I was thinking this isn't going to work. But here you go. Here is my version of this flower and the inspiration version. This Scandinavian floral motif leads me into the final section of this video, which is about using printables off the internet. So there was some other motifs in this kit, including some coffee items that I really liked. I didn't have anything like that in my stash, so I went searching for clip art, and I found this website called Free Pick. And you can download and use a lot of their graphics for your personal use with no cost. However, if you're going to be showing them off like I am on a YouTube video, you do have to give attribution, which you will see down there on the bottom of the screen, to Free Pick as the supplier of these graphics. And that is a pretty small cost for doing something simple like just printing out a couple of elements to add to my work. So if you are looking for personal use and you're not going to be, doing anything complicated like producing YouTube videos out of it, then you don't even have to worry about that part. You can just use these for free. So to finalize them into embellishments, I brought out my corner rounder, and I'm going to do one that's rounded on all four corners and the other one that has this more mod look to it, since that fits with the motif. So here is a final look at a bunch of the things that I created, except for those printables. And you'll notice that there are a few extra things on here. Those were mostly just stamped and punched or die cut out with specialty die cuts, so it didn't make sense to include those in this video. All right, that wraps up this makes video. I hope you got some tips and tricks out of this, and if you did, I'd love to hear what you appreciated, so drop me a comment. And until next time, I hope you have an artful day.